Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Miguron Akri front flipper, at least that's how I'm going to pronounce it. I cannot believe that I have not reviewed this knife. I feel like there's some kind of Mandela effect going on. I could have sworn that I have reviewed this, but apparently not. Maybe that's why Miguron sent me one. But thank you so much to Miguron for sending this to me for review. This knife is available right now. It is very inexpensive, and it is very, very impressive for a front flipper. I'll link it right down below so you guys can check it out if you want. It comes in a couple of different flavors. I think all black and then this one and maybe one more. I don't know. It does help my channel when you use my links, but that is entirely up to you. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this really nice, sleek looking front flipper here. Miguron Akri coming in at a very nice 8 1/4 inches overall. Blade length is coming in, wow, 3 point, get this exactly right. Yeah, that's all of 3.75 inches. That's impressive. Cutting edge is coming in at about 3.6. How about some size comparisons? Just a couple. Just a few. Couple's not the right word. Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1, you can see there. It's a pretty big knife. And then up against the Ontario Rat Model 2, how about we swap that one out there for the Demco 80 20.5, sorry, thumb still recovering. It was a deep cut. How about up against the Spyderco Para 3? There we go. And then finally, how about up against the Benchmade Bug Out? There we go. Definitely a little bit longer there. All right. How's the action on this guy? So, Miguron knives are made in China. If you've been watching my content, or frankly anybody's content over the last couple of years, you'll know that Miguron has been making some of the most ridiculously well executed knives in this territory. Their premium line is very good, but where they shine, in my opinion, is the budget territory. On this channel, a budget knife is under $75. It's fine. You can think whatever you want about what a budget knife, what the price should be. But in my book, a budget knife is anything under 75 bucks. This guy's way under 75. And it's hitting the quality mark much higher. There's a lot of amazing elements here. The lead in there is we were going to talk about action, and as you can see, the action is just superb. As a front flipper, this does exactly what you want it to do. My beef with front flippers is when they are front flippers only and they have no other means of deployment. I don't think a thumb stud would kill this thing. That being said, it honestly works really well, and the front flipper is not obtrusive. It's not sticking way out like some kind of weird unicorn horn thing. If you are a person who is new to front flippers and you're like, I want to get a good one. I want to try one. I don't want to spend a bunch of money on a really expensive one, right? And then find out that I hate front flippers. Here you go. This is it right here, right? If that's all you wanted to learn from this video, there's your answer, right? Stick around if you want me to convince you on some other stuff, because there's a lot to enjoy here. But yes is the answer to that. The action's very good. Also, the disengagement is good because of this beautiful cutout area right here. This is exactly how you want to do that if you're not going to cut out the front scale to be lower than the rear scale or the liner, right? This allows you, even if you have fat thumbs, it allows you to approach that lock bar from the side, disengage it, let it drop safely to your thumb or your fingernail, and then turn it and let it drop down into the closed position. That is exactly what I want it to do. The action is beautiful. It's so good for the money. It really is. Detent is tuned properly, right? Nothing feels flimsy. Everything feels very solid on this knife. Let's go ahead and do carry profile thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see here it is a little bit thicker, but we get contoured scales, which in my opinion is a nice trade-off as long as it doesn't get too thick. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. You can see here this guy's pretty slender, pretty narrow profile, just a little bit longer than the Para 3, but definitely shorter than the PM2. Nowhere near as tall as either. Even with the additional thickness, it gets pretty compact in the pocket for as big a knife as it is. Let's go ahead and weigh it. What are we looking at for materials here? We're looking at, in this case, OD green G10, black liners, and a black coated 14C28N blade. The liners on the inside have been pretty dramatically milled out for weight reduction, which is nice. There's the scale. Weight, it feels a little bit 4 1/4. That's my guess. Hey, we were close. 4.13 ounces. Not a perfect 1-to-1 ratio if we're doing an ounce of weight for an inch of blade. But, not bad. Not bad at all. And honestly, the balance on this knife is legitimately, it's right where you're going to put your index finger, right behind the pivot. That's where I like to see it. So it, for whatever reason, feels a little bit more bulky than that. Like just holding it, and I think it's because it's so slender, but it's such a solid knife. I don't mind it. The solidity feels good here, so I can't really complain. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'll get out my tools as per usual. What in blue blazes? I'll get out my tools. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. I'm going to guess from past experiences that the pivot is a T8. And that is the case. How about the body screw? Screws? Yeah, those are also T8, which is fantastic. There's just 2 over here, 1 over here, and then it looks like one of the pocket clip screws, which is also a T8. Thank you, Miguron. Yeah, that's perfect. I wouldn't have it any other way unless you could reduce the hardware even more. But this is good. This is the standard for minimal hardware. It's a liner lock construction with bearings. It's got a pivot, right? We've got sandwich construction with the back spacer. It's real simple. If you've been, a knife person for any amount of time, this is about as simple as it gets it's not as simple as it gets, but it's one of the simplest types of knives to take apart and maintain and then put back together. So no big deal there. Let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness. God-forsaken calipers. There they are. Sorry. I don't know why these are just invisible. I need to just put pink tape all over these things. The blade stock thickness on this is coming in curiously kind of thick. 140, it says 142 thousandths, probably more like 140. Usually they're getting it on the money. My calipers are off. Thicker than I would have expected, but no big deal. Okay, have we gotten through that? Let's go through the meat and potatoes here. This is a real straightforward, plain looking knife, which sometimes, sometimes it bothers me and sometimes it doesn't. The thing that shines through here is the overall quality. There are an infinite number of really simple minimalist designs out there. That got really popular. I mean, I suppose it was never not popular. Like the folding steak knife kind of look with variations here or there with the handle and the blade. That's just been the thing for a long time. And the reason it is generically appealing is because it is safe, right? There's nothing too controversial going on with the blade or the handle. It's just straight. It is knife. Here is knife, right? Textbook, almost textbook definition shape of knife, just with slight variations. But sometimes it's just like, oh, there it is, and the quality is, about par for the course. What I like about this one is they go above and beyond. They really do. And it's kind of hard to see this through the rectangle here. I would suggest that you look, and people who own Miguron knives, especially, if you're talking about the budget ones, if you own these, let people know in the comments, right? You don't have to take my word for it. I can guarantee that there are plenty of people who watch my channel who have purchased the less expensive Miguron knives who will echo this. This is ridiculous. The level of quality here is ridiculous, and it's something that you kind of have to feel, right? We have excellent contouring, and honestly, just general amazing execution of G10. It's just G10, but it just looks so much better. So nice and smooth. Edges are nicely chamfered down. Got this nice little heavily chamfered area up here. I like the Miguron pivot logo, which looks a lot like the Majin logo, right? When what's his name? Bibbidi gets, or is it Bibbidi or Bobbidi? I think it's Bobbidi gets Vegeta, right? In Dragon Ball Z. That's what it looks like to me. But yeah, everything looks good. Seating, the hardware looks good. These are lipped liners. They're not recessed. That would have been really impressive had they recessed the liners. They probably could have made it a little thinner. I'm not saying it actually needs that though. It probably would have reduced the weight by maybe a little bit, not much, a fraction of an ounce, right? But this is fine the way that it is. I think that's part of the reason they're able to get these down as inexpensive as they are. But there's definitely some other mysteries here as far as how they're getting the price that low. But yeah, execution is just wonderful. Ergonomically, there's not really a lot locking you in, but you are so free. I mean, as far as ergonomics go, you can choke all the way up, you can kind of go in the middle, you can choke back. There's nothing about this handle that says you have to put your hands a specific way on this, right? A knife that I always use as a reference that just bothers me, it just bothers the beans out of me, is the Boker Kalashnikov. That knife is like, put your hands right here or you can't use me. You know, it just drives me nuts. I don't like those really specific finger positions. This has none of that. So the drawback is that there is no lock-in. If you're working in a wet or slippery environment, you're going to need to wear gloves because there's nothing stopping your hand from riding up on the blade. But if you're not, and you're paying attention to where your hands are, it's really comfortable. It's not like, oh my gosh, hand melting is the best thing I've ever felt. But it's very, very good. And you definitely have that freedom. I think for general EDC purposes, most people are not going to be bothered by it. The pocket clip is also flat and very nicely rounded off, so no hot spot there. That's awesome. The flipper tab, very low profile and very not aggressive on your fingers. There's enough jimping there and there's enough of a horn here to be able to get your finger up there and deploy it in a satisfying way. Not just deploy it, but deploy it in a way that feels like, yeah, it's definitely, as soon as my thumb slides over the top of that or really kicks over the top of that, that blade is going to rocket out into the open position, and that's what you want to see. This is a very, very simple drop point blade. It reminds me of the blade on the ProTech Newport and roughly, I don't know, 10,000 other knives, right? And it's just a drop point blade, right? It's not a copy of anything. It's just a drop point blade. It's a copy of the bug out. There's a flat that runs about 75%, maybe 80% the length of the blade. There's a nice swedge up here, and it drops down to, honestly, a fairly thin edge. In fact, I think, yeah, this is, can we see? It's black. It's hollow ground. Pretty cool. Not the thinnest hollow grind in the world, but it absolutely will slice and cut, and it's pretty good. In fact, I'll give you a quick look on paper. The paper test does not prove anything. No matter how many times I say that, there's still people who are like, Metal Complex's paper test doesn't prove anything, as if I didn't say it. They just aggressively shove that through. I know! That's why I say it. Your experience is obviously going to vary depending on what you're cutting. This is a concept that I understand. It's a concept that everybody understands. I don't know who doesn't understand this. The purpose of the paper cut test is not to prove anything specific. All I'm showing is this is how the factory edge will react cutting something like paper. We can see here it's sharpened well. We don't have the lips of the cut rolling back over the paper. It's readily slicing, right? So you can take this and judge it how you will, depending on how you're going to use it and whether or not you're going to be sharpening it all the time, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It depends on how you're going to use it. But right out of the box, it's plenty sharp. It's plenty slicey. Not an open L, but it's good to go. Tip is pointy. It will puncture. There's not much more to say about that. The final cutting bevel looks good. Looks even. Nothing goofy or wonky here. It's pretty typical budget factory edge that is just been sharpened really, really well. Black coating's fine. Coatings in the budget territory kind of bother me. 14C28N is a good composition. In fact, it's probably the best budget composition that you can get. That's what is on this, right? It is incredibly well balanced, has decent edge retention, has good toughness, good corrosion resistance, and is very easy to touch up and sharpen, and that's what you want, right? The coating seems more of like an aesthetic embellishment to me, and the problem with coatings is they generally reduce the Rockwell hardness by 1 for the range. So if the range is, let's say hypothetically, their range for 14C28N is 59 to 61. I want it to be a little higher. Obviously, if anybody who doesn't know, right, people get confused and they think, oh, okay, here's how composition works. Anything that's under 60 is bad and anything that's over 60 is good. No, it is different for every single composition. However, knives and companies in this budget territory like to kind of do this static, like, yeah, it's 59, 61, right? They just apply all. copy paste, right? Which I don't really agree with. 14C20N just happens to be one of those steels that's pretty darn good at 60 to 61. 59 is kind of that, right? When you coat it, that range drops. It goes from 59.61 to 58 to 60, which means there's only a 33% chance or so that you're going to get one that's okay. 58 is bleh. You don't want that, right? Yeah, it's not going to chip as readily, but it's not going to hold an edge as readily as 14C28N is supposed to optimally, right? This is a budget steel. It should be hit optimally, right? I think if the coating's going to bring it down to a spot where it's not acceptable, then it shouldn't be coated, right? And this is something that I should say about all budget knives, right? Truthfully, I do not know what their range is, and I do not have Rockwell testing equipment. Fortunately, there's been a rise of people in the community who are actually able to do this. Transparent Knives is one of those people, and he is an absolute godsend, right? So I don't know what this is at, but whenever I see coatings on a knife like this, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting extra corrosion resistance, but was that a really balanced trade-off? I don't know, right? So that's my 2 cents on that. I'm not saying that this is factually the case. For all I know, Miguron could be hardening these super high, right? And then, the -1 for the coating could actually end up still landing it in a zone that's just fine. I'm just letting you know, for those of you who are new to the knife world, be aware of this. Anyways, the blade is good. I like it a lot. It will cut. And the knife allows you to get in different hand positions that will be more or less optimal depending on what you are doing, and that's great. There's a lanyard hole. Whoop-de-doo. There's a backspacer that looks good. We have green, then black, then green, then black, then green, right? That's nice. Just a simple G10 backspacer. It'll work. The pocket clip is phenomenal. It is simple, but it is a milled titanium clip. A milled clip. Listen, there are companies who... it's wanting to grab the screw here, but out here you can see the magnet has no interest in the pocket clip. That doesn't necessarily mean it's titanium. It could be. No, it's in the case of knives, right? It's going to be either titanium or steel, and only on some of the more expensive or crazier knives do you start to get different materials like carbon fiber pocket clips or this or that, right? Damascus clips. But the magnet test will tell me, right, is it steel or titanium? Because that's generally 99.99999% of the time, that's all you're going to see. This is amazing because we have, most of the time, to get a titanium clip on a budget knife, you have to buy it after the fact, and you're going to pay at least $10. More often, you're going to pay about $15. It's more amazing considering the price of this knife. We have knives in this general territory that are using the same materials that are not the same level of quality, coming in at $15 more without a titanium clip, and then you can turn around and buy a titanium clip for $15 more, right? So that's pretty amazing. The clip is also, it's not an afterthought, right? The carry depth is nice. It's medium. In and out of the pocket is great because of a nice rise underneath there. It's going to rise to lift over most pocket seam thicknesses without having to use your other hand. It's just in and out of the pocket with one hand, right? And it's also flat and rounded off. So no hot spot. It's titanium is much more forgiving than steel. So if it does happen to grab, which it likely won't because there's no crazy stupid bill on the end of it that some companies do. So yeah, you're good to go. A little pivot collar here. I'm going to venture to guess that it is aluminum. I suppose it could be brass. It looks aluminum. It's a nice little decorative touch. I don't know that it really matters all that much, but it's nice and it looks good in contrast with the OD green. The stop pin is located right here. It's a pretty beefy stop pin. No shouldering, but it doesn't need it. No blade play, up, down, left, or right. There is no lock stick. There is no pivot lash at all. Lockup, well, let's go ahead and fire it like we normally would. Lockup is coming in, I don't know if we can see it, fairly early, right? Oh, I don't know. That looks a little bit early. Is it going to disengage? I do not really like the spine whack test, but we'll go ahead and do it here just to prove that they've done it right, right? I think I had this conversation with somebody in the comments section the other day who made a good point. They said, I don't really like the spine whack test, but I think light spine pressure testing is appropriate because there are situations where you are going to be pushing the blade into denser, thick material and it might get stuck. Trying to wrench it back out will occasionally put pressure on the spine, and in a poor design, that will cause the lock to disengage, and guess what happens after that? It's coming down on your finger, right? What I don't like is when people are like, Chris, so what I'm going to do here is swing this knife as hard as I can at this cement wall, right? I'm basically going to put the same amount of force into it as I would a baseball bat. Well, see, there's the problem. It disengages. So let me introduce you to the cold steel triad lock that's definitely not overkill and would have withstood this type of force, right? That's blah, right? Now, a little bit, what I was doing right there, that's all that's needed, right? If you need more than that, use a fixed blade. Or better yet, probably whatever it is that you're doing, you probably need a different tool. Let's be real, right? No, not going to disengage. Pretty darn good. And still, no lock stick, right? Even after some of that force there on the back of the spine, just fine. Probably not going to do that every single time unless I see that the lockup is really, really early, right? Or it feels, because you can feel doing this if there's slip in the lock, and there's not. Very ridiculously smooth. Nice click. Oh, nice click. And then, sorry. Perfect centering with no detent lash. Okay, yeah, this knife is $49. $49. I waited 20 minutes to hear the price. Well, it tells me that the only thing that was important to you was the price. There was a lot of other information there. And I wanted you to have it, right? I told you at the beginning this is a good knife, and I meant it. I highly recommend this knife. It's a great budget knife. It's a great EDC knife. It's a great first front flipper. It's a great 30th front flipper, right? This is one of those knives that just makes sense. I would like to see Miguron make this in a premium version and do their crazy like micro milling where they have the milling and then they have the milling in between, which I think is just a product of the milling. That I don't think it's like an extra. I think it's just what happens when they mill it. But I'd like to see that. I'd like to see them put some, don't just do M390, put some like S90V on it. Make sure that you're heat treating it correctly, right? And do a nice, like high polished tumbled finish on the blade. That would be awesome. It'd be really cool. But as a budget knife, this is just exquisite. Extremely recommendable. It's going to go on my most recommended knives playlist and my cheap knives I like playlist. So make sure and check those out if you're looking for either. Thanks again to Miguron for sending this in for review. This knife will likely get given away during a live event at some point. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.